Stop for a moment, whatever you're doing, just pause, because what I'm about to share with you could genuinely be the most important 4 minutes of health information you hear all year. That's not said for dramatic effect, and it's not meant to alarm you, but the reality is this. Most people over the age of 50 are not being told this information, even by their own doctors, and it's not necessarily because those doctors are unaware of it. In many cases, it's because what we're about to talk about doesn't come packaged as a prescription, it doesn't sit on a pharmacy shelf, and it doesn't generate the kind of attention that medications do. But its impact is real, measurable, and supported by decades of research. I'm Dr. William Lee, a vascular biologist and cancer researcher, and over the past 25 years, I've dedicated my work to understanding what actually prevents cancer, not at a surface level, but deep within the body, at the cellular and molecular level, where disease truly begins. And what my research, along with findings from one of the largest long-term studies ever conducted by Harvard's TH, Chan School of Public Health has revealed is something both simple and powerful. A specific set of daily lifestyle habits can reduce overall cancer risk by as much as 61% in adults over 50. That number alone should make you stop and think. 61% achieved, not through expensive treatments or complex therapies, but through consistent, intentional daily behavior. Today, I'm going to walk you through 5 of the most effective components of that lifestyle, carefully ranked from helpful to truly transformative, so that by the time you finish watching, you'll have a clear and practical understanding of what you can begin doing as early as tomorrow morning. And before we move forward, there's something important I want you to keep in mind. The number 1 habit on this list is something that nearly 90% of people over the age of 60 are currently doing incorrectly. Even more striking, the data suggests that correcting this single habit alone could potentially cut cancer risk nearly in half. That's why it's critical not to skip ahead. Each step builds on the previous one, and the sequence matters more than you might expect. But before we begin, I want to hear from you directly. Take a moment and leave a comment below sharing your age, and answer this honestly. Has any doctor ever sat down with you and discussed cancer prevention in depth? Not just screening or early detection. I read every comment, and your responses genuinely influence what I cover in future videos. Now, let's begin with number 5. At first glance, number 5 may seem almost too simple to matter. In fact, many people dismiss it entirely, assuming that something so basic couldn't possibly have a serious impact on something as complex as cancer. But that assumption may be costing people more than they realize. We're talking about hydration specifically. Drinking between 16 to 20 ounces of cold or room temperature filtered water first thing in the morning, before you have your coffee, before breakfast, and even before you check your phone. Now, it's easy to overlook this habit, but the science behind it is surprisingly deep, especially when you look at how the body changes with age. After the age of 55, a process known as interoceptive thirst sensitivity begins to decline. In simple terms, this means your brain becomes less effective at signaling when your body actually needs water. You may feel perfectly fine even when your cells are functioning below optimal hydration levels. A study conducted in 2019 by the University of Barcelona found that adults over 60 are often operating at a hydration deficit of 8 to 12% without experiencing any noticeable thirst. That might not sound significant, but at a cellular level, it has serious consequences. Your lymphatic system, which acts as the body's internal waste management network, depends heavily on proper hydration to function efficiently. It is responsible for clearing out damaged cells, cellular waste, and fragments of DNA that could otherwise contribute to disease. When hydration levels drop, this system slows down. Waste begins to accumulate, inflammation increases, and over time, that chronic low-grade inflammation creates an environment where cancer is more likely to develop, particularly in areas like the colon, bladder, and kidneys. Large-scale studies support this connection. For example, data from the Harvard Nurses' Health Study showed that women who consistently drank more than 5 glasses of water per day had a 45% lower risk of developing colon cancer compared to those who consumed 2 glasses or fewer. That's a substantial difference for something that costs nothing and requires minimal effort. For older adults, hydration also plays a key role in supporting autophagy which is the body's natural process of cleaning and recycling damaged cellular components. As we age, this process becomes less efficient, declining by roughly 30% after the age of 65. But maintaining proper hydration has been shown to partially restore its effectiveness. The practical application of this is straightforward. Keep a full glass of water by your bedside and make it the first thing you consume when you wake up. Drink it completely without delay. If you prefer, you can add a small amount of fresh lemon, which contains compounds like D-limonene that may offer additional protective benefits. To enhance the effect even further, combine your hydration with a few minutes of light movement, even if it's just walking around your home. Movement helps stimulate lymphatic flow, increasing the efficiency of waste removal throughout the body. Research from the Karolinska Institute suggests that combining hydration with movement can amplify this cleansing effect significantly. This simple habit may not feel groundbreaking, but it lays the foundation for everything that follows. Building on that foundation, the next habit shifts from what you drink to what you feed your internal ecosystem, and this is where things start to become even more interesting. Number 4 centers around a category of foods that have quietly been part of traditional diets across the world for centuries, especially in regions known for exceptional longevity. Yet, for a long time, modern Western medicine largely overlooked their importance. Today, that perspective has changed dramatically. We're talking about fermented foods, natural, unprocessed options like plain yogurt, kefir, kimchi, sauerkraut, and miso. What makes these foods so powerful isn't just their nutrient content, but the living microorganisms they introduce into your gut, which directly influence inflammation, immunity, and even cancer risk. In 2021, a highly respected study from Stanford University School of Medicine, published in the journal Cell, provided some of the strongest evidence to date. Researchers found that individuals who regularly consume diets rich in both fiber and fermented foods experienced a significant increase in microbiome diversity. At the same time, they showed a measurable reduction in 19 different inflammatory proteins, many of which are directly linked to cancer progression. This is especially important for individuals over 50 because aging brings structural changes to the gut itself. After the age of 60, intestinal permeability tends to increase, a condition often referred to as leaky gut. Essentially, the lining of the gut becomes more porous, allowing harmful bacterial toxins, known as lipopolysaccharides, to pass into the bloodstream. Once there, they trigger widespread inflammation throughout the body. And as we now understand, chronic inflammation acts almost like fuel for precancerous cells, encouraging their growth and survival. To understand how this plays out in real life, consider a patient I once worked with, a 6-7-year-old woman named Margaret. She had been dealing with persistent fatigue, elevated inflammatory markers, and a strong family history of colorectal cancer. On paper, her diet appeared healthy. She was eating balanced meals, avoiding processed foods, and staying generally active. But there was one critical gap. She wasn't consuming any fermented foods at all. We made a simple adjustment, adding 2 daily servings, kefir in the morning and a small portion of sauerkraut with lunch. Within just 90 days, her inflammatory markers dropped significantly, with her C-reactive protein levels decreasing by 38%. Even her gastroenterologist was surprised by the improvement, but more importantly, she reported feeling like herself again, something she hadn't experienced in years. What's happening behind the scenes here comes down to compounds known as short-chain fatty acids, particularly one called butyrate. These compounds are produced when beneficial gut bacteria break down fiber. Butyrate in particular has a remarkable function. It signals abnormal or precancerous cells in the colon to undergo apoptosis, which is essentially a controlled process of cellular self-destruction. Instead of allowing damaged cells to linger and potentially turn malignant, butyrate helps remove them early before they can cause harm. You can think of it as an internal quality control system, quietly identifying and eliminating risks before they escalate. To apply this in your own routine, aim to include 1 to 2 servings of naturally fermented foods each day. It's important to choose options that contain live and active cultures, as pasteurization destroys the beneficial bacteria you need. Reading labels becomes essential here, and to maximize the effect, combine fermented foods with prebiotic-rich ingredients such as garlic, leeks, or slightly underripe bananas. These prebiotics act as fuel for the beneficial bacteria, helping them thrive and multiply, which strengthens the overall impact on your gut and immune system. When these elements work together, the result is a more balanced internal environment, one that is far less supportive of inflammation and disease. Now, while number 4 is undeniably powerful, the next habit takes things even further by directly influencing how your body produces and uses energy at the cellular level. This is where the science becomes not only more complex, but also more impactful in ways that most people don't fully appreciate. Before we move on, if you're finding this information useful, it's worth taking a second to engage with the video because content like this is designed specifically to bring evidence-based health strategies to people over 50, and continued support ensures that research-backed insights like these keep reaching those who need them most. With that in mind, let's move into number 3, because this is where a familiar concept is redefined in a way that can completely change how you approach it. Number 3 is something nearly everyone has heard recommended at some point: walking. But not all walking is the same, and the difference between casual movement and what researchers now refer to as metabolic walking is far more significant than most people realize. In fact, doing it correctly can actively shift your internal environment in a way that makes it far less favorable for cancer cells to survive. To understand why, we need to look at how your body generates energy. At its core, your body relies on two primary fuel systems: glucose and oxygen. Healthy cells are flexible, they can efficiently use both. Cancer cells, however, behave very differently. Due to a metabolic characteristic first identified by biochemist Otto Warburg in the early 20th century, cancer cells rely heavily on glucose for energy and are much less efficient at using oxygen. This creates an opportunity. When you engage in sustained, moderate intensity physical activity, enough to elevate your heart rate to roughly 55 to 70% of its maximum, you create two simultaneous effects. First, you reduce the amount of circulating glucose in your bloodstream, effectively limiting the primary fuel source that cancer cells depend on. Second, you increase oxygen delivery throughout your tissues, creating conditions that are less supportive of cancer cell survival. It's a dual effect that directly targets the metabolic weaknesses of cancer cells. Large-scale research supports the impact of this approach. A comprehensive analysis conducted by the American Cancer Society in 2020 reviewed data from over 1.4 million adults and found that consistent, moderate physical activity was associated with a 42% reduction in colon cancer risk, a 38% reduction in breast cancer risk, and a 27% reduction in lung cancer risk, even among individuals who had never smoked. These are not small improvements. They represent significant shifts in long-term health outcomes. And for older adults, the benefits extend even further. As we age, the mitochondria, the structures within our cells responsible for producing energy, begin to decline in both number and efficiency. This decline can reach up to 35% by the age of 65, and it plays a major role in both aging and disease progression. Metabolic walking has been shown to stimulate mitochondrial biogenesis, which means it encourages the body to produce new, healthy mitochondria. In simple terms, it helps restore your cell's ability to generate energy effectively. To practice metabolic walking, aim for 30 to 45 minutes of continuous movement at a pace where you can still carry on a conversation, but would struggle to sing comfortably. This level of intensity ensures that your body is working within the optimal range for these metabolic benefits. Ideally, this should be done at least 5 days per week, and if possible, in the morning before your first full meal. Exercising in a fasted state enhances the glucose depleting effect, making the process even more effective. This may sound like a small adjustment, but over time, it creates a meaningful shift in how your body functions at a cellular level, and that shift plays a critical role in long-term cancer prevention. To see how this works beyond theory, it helps to look at a real example. I worked with a man named Robert, 72-year-old retired teacher from Portland, Oregon, who came to me after a serious health scare During a routine colonoscopy, doctors discovered and removed a precancerous polyp. While it hadn't yet developed into cancer, the experience left him deeply concerned about his future health. Up until that point, he had been living a relatively sedentary lifestyle with little to no structured physical activity. We decided to implement a simple but consistent routine centered around metabolic walking 35 minutes every morning, 5 days a week. Alongside some targeted dietary adjustments, he committed fully to the plan. Over time, the changes were not only measurable, but also meaningful. At his 2-year follow-up colonoscopy, there were no new abnormalities. His results came back completely clear. Even more telling, his inflammatory markers had improved significantly, something his medical team described as exceptional progress for someone in his age group. When Robert reflected on the experience, he described walking as feeling like a form of medicine, and in many ways, that's exactly what it became. When practiced correctly and consistently, this type of movement does far more than support general fitness. It actively reshapes the internal conditions that influence disease development. To strengthen the benefits even further, combining metabolic walking with other habits you've already learned creates a powerful cumulative effect. For example, pairing your morning walk with your hydration routine for number 5 enhances lymphatic circulation, helping your body clear cellular waste more efficiently. If you can walk outdoors, exposure to natural morning light adds another important layer. Early sunlight helps regulate your circadian rhythm, which governs everything from hormone production to immune function. When your internal clock is aligned, your body becomes more efficient at identifying and eliminating abnormal cells. This means you're not just reducing risk in one area, you're reinforcing multiple protective systems at once. And that's an important pattern you'll notice as we move forward. Each habit doesn't stand alone. They interact, support, and amplify one another, creating a biological environment where disease struggles to take hold. Now, while number 3 delivers powerful metabolic and systemic benefits, the next habit moves deeper into the molecular level, influencing gene expression and cellular defense systems in a way that is both precise and highly effective. This is where the science becomes especially compelling because number 2 focuses on a specific group of compounds found in everyday foods, compounds that have been studied extensively for their direct role in preventing cancer development, particularly in adults over 50. We're talking about sulforaphane, a bioactive compound found in cruciferous vegetables such as broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, and cabbage, with the highest concentrations found in broccoli sprouts. What makes sulforaphane so important is not just its presence in these foods, but its ability to activate a critical genetic pathway that protects your cells from damage. Research conducted at Johns Hopkins University, which has been at the forefront of sulforaphane studies, revealed that this compound activates a master regulatory gene known as NRF2. You can think of NRF2 as a central control system for your body's defense mechanisms. When activated, it triggers the expression of more than 200 protective genes. These genes are responsible for processes like detoxification, antioxidant production, and the repair of damaged DNA. This last function is especially important because DNA damage is one of the earliest steps in cancer development. If your body can repair that damage quickly and effectively, it significantly reduces the likelihood of mutations progressing into something more serious. However, as we age, the activity of NRF2 naturally declines. Between the ages of 50 and 70, its function can drop by as much as 40%, meaning your body's ability to defend itself at a genetic level is gradually weakening. Sulforaphane helps reverse that trend by reactivating this pathway, essentially restoring a level of protection that would otherwise continue to decline. The impact of this mechanism is supported by multiple studies. Research from the University of Illinois found that regular consumption of sulforaphane-rich foods was associated with a 52% reduction in bladder cancer risk and a 41% reduction in prostate cancer incidence, along with measurable improvements in markers linked to breast and lung cancer. Another important finding from the Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Center showed that sulforaphane may specifically target cancer stem cells. These are a small but critical group of cells within tumors that are often resistant to conventional treatments and are responsible for recurrence. By targeting these cells directly, sulforaphane addresses one of the most challenging aspects of cancer management. But there's an important detail that many people overlook when it comes to getting these benefits. Sulforaphane is not present in its active form in raw vegetables. It is created through a chemical reaction that occurs when the vegetable is chopped or chewed, activating an enzyme called myrosinase. The challenge is that this enzyme is highly sensitive to heat. Cooking vegetables at high temperatures can destroy it significantly, reducing the amount of active sulforaphane your body receives. To get around this, preparation becomes key. One effective method is to chop or lightly crush your vegetables and allow them to sit for about 30 to 40 minutes before cooking. This gives the enzymatic reaction time to complete, ensuring that sulforaphane is formed before heat is applied. Light steaming for a few minutes is ideal, as it preserves more of the compound compared to prolonged cooking. Alternatively, consuming raw broccoli sprouts is one of the most efficient ways to increase intake, as they contain significantly higher concentrations of sulforaphane compared to mature vegetables. For daily application, aim for about half a cup of raw broccoli sprouts or a full cup of properly prepared cruciferous vegetables. To further enhance absorption, you can pair these foods with natural sources of myrosinase, such as raw mustard seed powder or radishes. These additions help restore enzyme activity that may have been reduced during cooking, increasing the overall effectiveness of the compound. This level of detail might seem small, but it makes a measurable difference in how your body processes these nutrients. And when you combine this habit with the others you've already learned, the protective effects begin to stack in a meaningful way. At this point, we've covered 4 habits that influence hydration, gut health, metabolism, and genetic protection. Each one plays a distinct role, but together they create a system of defense that operates across multiple levels of the body. And yet, even with all of this in place, there's one final factor that ties everything together, a single daily habit that has the most profound and far-reaching impact on cancer prevention after the age of 50. This is where the research has been quietly pointing all along, and it's what most conversations about health still fail to fully address. Now we arrive at the most influential factor of all, the one that quietly shapes nearly every system in your body without you even noticing it, yet has one of the strongest connections to cancer prevention after the age of 50. Number 1 is sleep, but not just sleep in a general sense. What truly matters is something researchers now describe as oncological sleep architecture, meaning the timing, depth, and consistency of sleep that activates your body's most advanced repair and defense systems. When this system is working properly, your body carries out a level of maintenance and protection that simply cannot happen during waking hours. But when it's disrupted, the consequences extend far beyond feeling tired the next day. The underlying biology begins to shift in ways that increase vulnerability to disease. To understand why this matters so much, we need to look at what actually happens during deep sleep. In the later stages of the sleep cycle, particularly slow wave sleep, your brain activates a specialized cleaning system known as the glymphatic system. This network, discovered relatively recently by researchers at the University of Rochester, uses cerebrospinal fluid to flush out metabolic waste, toxic proteins, and cellular debris from the brain and nervous system. You can think of it as a maintenance cycle that only runs when the body is fully at rest. During the day, this system is largely inactive, meaning any buildup of waste continues until proper sleep allows it to be cleared. But the role of sleep in cancer prevention goes even further than this. During those same deep sleep stages, your body produces its highest levels of melatonin. While melatonin is widely known as the hormone that regulates sleep, its function extends far beyond that. It is also one of the most powerful natural antioxidants your body produces, and it plays a direct role in suppressing cancer development. Research published in Cancer Research has shown that melatonin can inhibit tumor angiogenesis, which is the process by which cancer cells form new blood vessels to support their growth. Without this blood supply, tumors struggle to expand. In addition, melatonin enhances the activity of natural killer cells, which are a critical part of your immune system, responsible for identifying and destroying abnormal cells before they can develop into something more serious. These cells act as your body's first line of defense against cancer, constantly scanning for threats and eliminating them early. However, as we age, melatonin production declines significantly. Between the ages of 40 and 70, levels can drop by as much as 70%, meaning that one of your most powerful internal defense mechanisms is gradually weakening. For many individuals over 65, nighttime melatonin production becomes minimal, reducing the effectiveness of both cellular repair and immune surveillance during sleep. The impact of disrupted sleep on cancer risk is not just theoretical, it is well documented. In fact, the International Agency for Research on Cancer has classified long-term night shift work, which disrupts natural sleep patterns, as a probable human carcinogen. That places it in the same category as certain environmental toxins, highlighting just how serious chronic sleep disruption can be. When your circadian rhythm is consistently misaligned, your body loses its ability to regulate key processes effectively, including hormone production, immune response, and cellular repair. Over time, this creates conditions that are far more favorable for disease to develop. I once worked with a patient named Eleanor, a 1-year-old retired nurse from Scottsdale, Arizona, who had been struggling with poor sleep for years. She was averaging only 5 to 6 hours per night and waking frequently. When we assessed her immune function, her natural killer cell activity was significantly suppressed. We implemented a structured sleep protocol focused on consistency and environmental adjustments. She began going to bed at the same time each night, around 10 p.m., ensured her room was completely dark, lowered the temperature to around 67 degrees Fahrenheit, and avoided screens for at least 90 minutes before bedtime. We also introduced a small serving of tart cherry juice in the evening, which contains natural compounds that support melatonin production. Within 6 weeks, her sleep duration increased to about 7.5 hours per night, and she reported deeper, more restorative rest. At her 3-month follow-up, her natural killer cell activity had improved by 47%. Her medical team was genuinely surprised by the magnitude of the change. More importantly, she felt a level of rest and clarity she hadn't experienced in decades. Large-scale studies reinforce these individual outcomes. Long-term data from the University of California, San Diego, shows that adults over 60 who consistently get between 7 and 8.5 hours of high-quality sleep in a dark, cool environment have significantly lower cancer mortality rates compared to those who sleep fewer than 6 hours. This is not a minor difference. It represents a substantial shift in long-term health outcomes. To apply this in your own life, consistency is essential. Set a fixed bedtime and wake-up time, even on weekends, because your circadian rhythm relies on regular patterns. Keep your sleeping environment as dark as possible, since even small amounts of light can interfere with melatonin production. Maintain a cooler room temperature, ideally between 65 and 68 degrees Fahrenheit, and avoid eating within a few hours of bedtime, so your body can focus on repair rather than digestion. To enhance these effects, combine your sleep routine with exposure to natural morning light. As we discussed earlier, morning light helps anchor your internal clock, which in turn improves nighttime melatonin production. When these habits work together, they create a stable and supportive environment where your body can carry out its most important protective functions. When you step back and look at everything we've covered, a clear pattern begins to emerge, and it's one that often gets overlooked in modern health conversations. These habits are not isolated tricks or short-term fixes. They are deeply connected processes that work together to support the body in ways that medication alone cannot replicate. Hydration supports your body's internal cleaning systems. Fermented foods rebuild and protect your gut environment. Metabolic walking reshapes how your body produces and uses energy. Sulforaphane activates genetic pathways that defend and repair your cells. And sleep, when done correctly, coordinates all of these systems, ensuring they function at the right time and with maximum efficiency. Each habit strengthens the next, creating a layered defense that operates continuously, not just when you're actively thinking about your health. And perhaps the most important point here is that none of these require extreme effort, expensive programs, or complicated routines. They are simple, accessible, and grounded in how your biology is naturally designed to function. All of the studies and data referenced throughout this discussion are available for you to explore further, and it's worth taking the time to look into them. Share them with your doctor, ask questions, and use them as a foundation for informed decisions about your health. Because one of the biggest gaps in healthcare today is not a lack of treatment, it's a lack of clear, practical guidance on prevention. And that's something you can begin addressing immediately. What matters most now is not how much information you've absorbed, but what you choose to do with it. Even small, consistent changes can lead to meaningful improvements over time. You don't need to implement everything perfectly from day one. Start with one habit, build consistency, then layer in the next. This approach is far more sustainable and far more effective in the long run. There's also something important I want you to take away on a personal level. Age is often presented as a limitation, especially when it comes to health. But the science tells a very different story. Your body retains a remarkable ability to adapt, repair, and defend itself well into later life. Whether you are in your mid 50s, your 70s, or even beyond, these systems are still active. They may not function at the same level as they once did, but they are far from inactive. With the right inputs, they can be supported, strengthened, and in many cases, significantly improved. Prevention does not have an expiration date. It remains relevant at every stage of life, and that means the choices you make starting today still carry real weight for your future health. Think about what's truly at stake here. This isn't just about avoiding disease in an abstract sense. It's about maintaining your independence, your ability to move freely, to think clearly, and to stay present in the lives of the people who matter to you. It's about having the energy and capacity to engage with your daily life without constant limitation. And when you look at it from that perspective, the value of these habits becomes even clearer. A glass of water in the morning, a short walk, mindful food choices, and a consistent sleep routine. These are small actions, but their long-term impact is anything but small. They shape the quality of your life in ways that accumulate over time. So instead of viewing this as a list of recommendations, consider it a framework, one that aligns with how your body is meant to function. You don't need to chase every new trend or rely on complicated interventions. Focus on the fundamentals, apply them consistently, and allow the results to build gradually. The opportunity to begin is always there, every single morning, and that's something no one can take away from you. If you found this valuable, consider subscribing and sharing it with someone who could benefit from it. Conversations like this are more impactful when they reach beyond a single viewer. And before you go, take a moment to reflect on this. Which of these 5 habits are you ready to start with, and what has been the biggest obstacle preventing you from improving your sleep? Your answer matters, not just for you, but for shaping future discussions like this. I read every comment, and your input helps guide what comes next.